right? So, okay. So, do we see the flows, the aesthetic flows of the legs? I think we did, right? No? I'm gonna draw them, right? And then you tell me if we did these or no. But
I don't think we have done any legs.
Any legs? Okay, so let's go with the legs, right? So, any legs at all?
No, we did arm and hand.
Arm and hand. Okay, so let's go with the legs then, right? So let's block in now. Let's start with the scale, right? The scale. So let's block in the pelvis, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we block in here. We block in the measurement of the size of the pelvis, and so the pelvis, the height of the pelvis is 1, so this is going to be the box of 1, right? And the width is a little bit more than 1, so I am eyeballing it, but this, the width, so the height is 1, this should be about 1 1/4, right? So meaning a little bit wider than the height. And I look at that, maybe it could be a little bit wider here, right? Because 1, yeah, okay, so about 1 1/4, right? Because then you're going to be variation within the population, but the width of the pelvis is a little bit bigger than the height. So on the left side, I'm going to draw the stereometric rendering of the volume of the leg. On the right side, I'm going to draw the main volumes and the axis of the carrying angles, right? So carrying angles of legs, right? Okay, so if we work with the stereometric rendition, then we have the measure of the thigh, the length of the thigh, starting from the bottom of the pelvis here, and it's 1.5 heads. So from here, 1.5 heads is the length of the thigh below the pelvis, right? But then we're gonna measure it differently later on. So now let's go with the easy measurement, right? From here, I go down 2 heads, right? 1, so half, 1.5. This is the length of the lower leg and the foot. That includes the foot, right? So 1 pelvis, 1.5 thigh, 2 lower leg and foot. So as you notice here, I have the lateral side of the thigh is not going to this corner in here, is going to be a little bit outside because I want to go to the maximum width of the hips, which is more than the width of the pelvis. So the hips, let's find the hips. Divide this in 4 equal segments, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, right? That's the pubic bone. The pubic bone is at the lower quarter, so pubic bone. The iliac spine are at the upper quarter, right? And this is as is. So now the greater trochanter is going to be positioned here, at this point in here, right? I'm not going to draw the pelvis in here. I'm going to draw it here. I mean the pelvis in here. I'm going to draw it only here, right? So the greater trochanter sticks out at the level of the pubic bone, which is the lower quarter, about 1/8 of a head or something. And from here, it goes down like this to the thigh, right? So the widest point here and here is at the, basically at the level of the pubic bone, more or less, and it's also about at the midpoint of the figure. This is about the midpoint of the figure, meaning if I take this half in here, I'll bring it up, then I find the measurement for the upper part of the body. So when I look at this formula here like this, now I see the basic segment of the body, but they are stereometric rendering, so very, very essential. On this side and here, instead, I want to block in a little bit more organic rendering of the figure. So actually, I'm going to draw the whole pelvis in here. It makes no sense drawing only half of it. So now, iliac spine is the upper quarter, here and here. Pubic bone at the lower quarter, right? And now what I want to do, I want to block in the iliac crest that goes from the iliac spine around, emergent like this, all around like this. And that is the top of the bucket of the pelvis, right? Now, down here at the bottom of the pelvis, about half a head of width, I have now, see the bottom of the pelvis here, the bottom of the bucket, right? And now from the anterior superior iliac spine to the pubic bone, I create a line that merges them, creating a connection between the iliac wings and the pubic bone. Pubic bone has a thickness like this, right? And from here it goes down and down like this to create an opening here where the genitals are going to be in this area here, right? So women are going to have the genitals here. That space in here in women tend to be wide, actually is wider, because that is where the head of the baby will go through. In men, this angle in here, which is called subpubic angle, in men is smaller. There's no baby going through that, right? So now, let's position here now the head of the femur. The head of the femur is going to be included between the level of the pubic bone and the middle of the pelvis. And I draw a sphere here, half inside and half outside the margin of the pelvis, right? So now from here, I want to block in the skeleton, right? Keep it in mind that the articular plane of the knee and the articular plane of the ankles in here and the foot. I block now in the greater trochanter. The greater trochanter is a bump here on this side, right? It's basically the bone that you see on the side, feel on the side of the hips is called greater trochanter. I'm going to show you the greater trochanter here. I had just one greater trochanter here by chance, right? So that's the greater trochanter, right? This is a greater trochanter. And it's this portion here is all inside the acetabulum, the joint, and this is the neck of the femur, right? So now I want to find the width of the knee is about 7/8 of one hand, meaning a little bit on one hand, right? Once I find the width of the knees, then I want to look for this midpoint here. And from the center of the greater trochanter, which is a little bit at an angle like this, right? I am drawing a line that connects the greater trochanter with the joint of the knee. And this is now the shaft of the femur, right? So we have the greater trochanter, we have the femur, we have the head of femur, right? We have the neck of the femur. And the head of the femur is inside the acetabulum. The acetabulum is the cavity, right? Where the head of the femur goes in. Right? So now here's this neck, the neck of the femur, here like this, right? And from here go down, all the way down to the articular plane of the knee. And I want to draw like a can of Coke or something like that, right? It's not really quite like a can of Coke, it's smaller than that. It's like, but I want to think of this as a cylindrical form because it's easier. It's easier to understand. The whole thing is easier to understand. Once you have drawn my cylindrical form here, then I can make it slightly more organic by making this portion here, the medial portion of the side of the femur here, of the shaft of the femur, goes out gradually like this toward the condyle, right? And this portion here instead is straighter, like that, because it's a lesser angle. The neck of the femur, right? The neck of the femur is going to be angled at an angle here bigger than 90 degrees. It's going to be about 126, 130, 28, 136, something like that. But this angle needs to be bigger than 90 degrees. See that? This angle here compared to this angle here. See how big it is, right? How wide it is. Because what happens here, all the weight of the body will go down to, from the spine to the sacrum down to here, and then that travels along the neck and down to the shaft of the femur. It's like an arch. So if this angle is 90 degrees, when we apply weight in here, it's very likely to break, right? So that way, instead, we have an arch, and I'm going to show you the arch in here. So at the center here of the pelvis, we have the sacrum. The sacrum, the top of the sacrum is not at the level of the iliac crest. Therefore, the iliac crest will come down like this, go to the top of the sacrum, right? Here and here. And from in between the iliac wings, I have now the spine that goes up like this. The sacrum is thick, at this level here is thick, right? It's thick and has a noticeable volume here. From here, on this portion here, the sacrum here, there is a continuity with the iliac wing that then move forward and connect with the pubic bone, etc. And below here, the sacrum becomes flatter, right? And the tip of the sacrum, the bottom of the sacrum, is about at the same level as the pubic bone. That would be the coccyx, right? Now, all this portion here is thick, right? This portion here instead is thin, and in women's young women's skeleton, that is translucent. If you put this against the window, you see a little of light coming through because there's not a lot of weight being distributed here. But here, this portion here creates like an arch, that all this thick bone, so that when the weight from the upper part of the body is now discharged onto the column, right? And from here, what it does, some of it will travel a lot on one side and some of it will travel on the other side like that, and goes all this thick bone structure. It goes now discharged onto the head of the femur, and from here down the neck, and from here down the shaft of the femur, and from here down the tibia. So this really helped to understand why the angles of the leg, why the femur and why the skeleton are built that way. So it's important to know because it will help us to understand the aesthetics of the body, the posture of the body, and capture it when we draw it more clearly. Right? So below the head of the femur here, I have the head of the tibia. Right? So the femur, this is the shaft of the femur, and in fact, and this would be called diaphysis. diaphysis, I think that's how we spell it. And this is the distal portion here, and distal and proximal are called proximal and distal epiphysis, right? Okay, so the distal body and the proximal body, proximal close to the center. So you don't need to remember this technical language, but you know, I just gotta tell you anyway. So now this is the head of the tibia, right? And we're blocking the head of the tibia, similar dimension as the distal epiphysis or the femur. Find now the center of this block, right, of the head of the tibia, and we go down now to the foot, right? This measurement here, the measurement of the foot in height is about 1/3 of one head, which means that the lower leg would be 1 2/3, right, of a head. And the foot is 1/3. So now notice one thing, that when we measure the volume of the leg, starting using the stereometric volume, the stereometric rendition, the legs is measured from here with this level of rendition, right? And it's 1.5. But if we measure the skeleton, the femur starts from here. And when we measure the skeleton, it's 2 heads. So the femur is going to be 2 heads, right? The tibia that now goes from here to the articular plane of the foot, right? Which is in width here. The articular plane of the foot, the ankle, is 1/3, right? Meaning we go from the width of the knee joint is 7/8, right? And it goes down to 2/3 and start from 1.5. So we have this gradual tapering of the ankle from the ankle joint, sorry, from the hip joint to the knee joint to the pelvic joint. This joint gradually taper as they move away from the center. Now from here, I go down to the center of the articular plane of the ankle, and then I have therefore the axis, the diaphysis of the tibia that is not straight down like this. It's slightly at an angle like this, because it starts from wider and gets narrower, right? So that also helps us in understanding the angles, the carrying angles. These are the carrying angles, which I'm going to show you the diagram later on of the legs. So now from here, I draw the shaft of the tibia, or the diaphysis of the tibia. And when I get down to the articular plane here, I have now a medial malleolus here, right? The medial malleolus is a thickening of the bone at the end, and the medial malleolus is peaks at the level of the articular plane. But then the whole malleolus ends up slightly below the articular plane of the ankle, right? So meaning, see this, right? This is the articular plane, right? And that is the malleolus that kind of peaks. See that? It peaks at the same level as, let me see if I can do this without breaking anything, right? It peaks at the level of the ankle joint. But the lateral malleolus, which belongs to the fibula, goes a little bit lower, and it peaks therefore a little bit lower. So the two peaks, the peaks of this, the medial and the lateral malleolus, are going to be oriented at an angle like this. This is another carrying angle, right? So let's start now to position the fibula. It's the tibia, right? The fibula will start at this lower corner of the head of the tibia, and it will go down, and we're seen at the level of the ankle joint, but a little bit lower. Meaning, at this point, I start with the profile of the foot, which is very blocky. But then later, I want to kind of taper it a little bit. And so this is now the medius, not blocky. I kind of smooth the corners. And from here, I'm going to have the astragalus coming down like this, the part that connect with the foot coming down like this. And then from here, it goes out like that, so that I have one side, the malleolus here like this, right? And on the other side, the lateral malleolus is going to go lower here. It's going to lower like that, right? So here now, I'm going to refine my foot, make it more like a robot foot, kind of those anthropomorphic robots, right? Where they tend to have those strange shaped kind of synthetic feet, more than those wood blocks that the truckers put under the truck to not to lose the truck, right? At least when I was a kid. Now they don't do that anymore. So now here we go down to connect the two extremity of the fibula. And now we see how these two angles are going to be oriented like that, right? So this is the lower limb, the skeleton of the lower limb, right? So now what we can do, I'm gonna leave this like this, and then we're going to create another view with the muscles of the leg, right? Okay, so draw it again, right? Repeating helps, right? So I'm going to draw on one side the carrying angle of the blocks and the other side the anatomy, right? So you can see how we can really explore the same subject from many different points of view. Depending what do we want to isolate, right?
Roberto, what did you say the width of the ankles was?
It's 2/3.
2/3, thank you.
Yeah, that's easy to remember because you think like 1/3, and you have a block like that. So 1/3 here, right? 1/3 the height, 1/3 the width here. So it should be easier to remember. If you remember that the height is the same with the width. The height is 1/3, right? And the width is the same as the height here.
And Roberto, what were you calling?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The name of the two bulges that you say are at the angle. I couldn't catch the name.
Oh, so that the tibia, this one, right? And the fibula is this one here, outside. The fibula is outside, the outside bone, and then you have here the malleoli. Malleoli or medial and lateral malleolus, right? Malleoli is plural, right? Medial and lateral. Well, medial malleolus and lateral malleolus. Malleus means hammer.
Ah, thank you.
I think it was the famous witch's hammer, right? The malleolus maleficarum, which is the witch's hammer. It's some inquisitor wrote this book called Malleolus Maleficarum. Maleficarum, evil were the witches, and malleolus is the hammer. I'm going to use the hammer the witches, right? So malleolus means hammer. Okay, so those inquisitor, right? The greatest inquisitor were Franciscans and Benedictines. I mean, after St. Francis, disappeared because they say, I don't want to have anything to do with this, right? But Franciscan and Benedictines, actually, no, sorry, not Benedictines, Dominicans. Dominicans were the greatest. In fact, it was a joke about Dominicans. Domenicani. That was Domenicani was also kind of read as Domine Canis, meaning the hounds of the Lord.
Wow.
They were hounding heretics. Anyway, interesting trivia from centuries past, right? Okay, so all right, so 1 and 2, that's good, right? So now we block in the skeleton again, using now, this is a box, but we're going to use it just as a faint trace, right? Faint trace of the stereometric rendering. And then we want also to find the coordinate, if you want, for the top, the bottom, and the middle, right? So at the top here, I find that the upper quarter a little bit inside in relation to the maximum width. I find as is, right? As is stands for anterior, superior, iliac spine. So now from here, I go all around like this, creating the iliac crest, right? And we have seen iliac crest already here, so I'm not gonna write it again, but the iliac crest is this bone that you feel on your side, right? Just below the waist. And then on here we have the base of the pelvis, like this, right? And I can find out the sides, the side of the pelvis. You think of a bucket that is open to the front here. And this is lower part, which is the pubic bone, right? And the pubic bone, Tibia. So as is that the upper quarter, Tibia at the lower quarter, and this is another quarter here, right? In the middle where I have the top of the head of the femur, one here, and from outside here, now from the center of this, I want to go out with an angle, which now I wait to establish because I want to first block in the femur, right? But this is the pelvis with the essential landmarks. These you're gonna see, this you're gonna see, the iliac spine you're gonna see in the model, this you're going to see in the model. You might see the greater trochanter on the side, but you do not see the greater trochanter from the front because it's covered by muscle, which we're going to see in a while, right? So now from here, I go down with the center line like this, right? And at the level of the 1.5 heads down, I find the knee joint. The knee joint we have seen together is 7/8 of a head, meaning if this is 3/4, because I divide in 3/4, then 7/8 is going to be a little bit more than that, right? So here. So now I had to have the width of the knees that is almost as the height, but not quite, a little bit less than that, right? But it's less than, a little bit less than 1 head. Now, from find the midpoint of the width of the knee joint, and starting from the trochanter. Where's the trochanter? The trochanter start from the top of the trochanter is at the level of the center of the head of the femur, comes out just outside the box of the maximum width of the pelvis. We find the trochanter, which then is angled inward, so it's gonna come in, right? But that's the maximum width. How wide is it? A little bit. 1/8 of 1 head. It's not that wide, but overall, if I had 1/8 in here and 1/8 here, now what it was before 1.25, right? Now is 1.5 because I add 2/8, meaning 1/4 to 1.25, and that is 1.5 heads. So the width from trochanter to trochanter is 1.5 heads. Now here I have the greater trochanter right here and here, right? Just barely peeking out here from the lower margin of the great trochanter, I go down like this with the shaft of the trochanter here and here. And I create now the angles, the carrying angle of the femurs. So this angle can be straighter, can be a little bit straighter, a little bit wider, but they're always coming in like this, right? They're going in like this. I can block in now the neck of the femur, and I can, instead of having a, well, that's enough like this. So I can leave this as a round form. Nobody's gonna get hurt, because the reality is not a whole sphere, it's only half a sphere, because it's only the part that is in contact with the inside of the joint is rounded. The rest doesn't need to be rounded, so it's straight. Below, at the lower, just below here, below at the level of the base of the pelvis, and just below, toward the end of the great trochanter, I have the lesser trochanter. It's another bump here, posterior, which we're gonna need later on. So that's the lesser trochanter, right? But as a general rule, when the name specifies the anterior and superior iliac spine, it means I also have an anterior inferior, right? Because it specifies superior means I also have the inferior, which is here. This is the anterior inferior iliac spine. Then if I specify an anterior, it means I also have a posterior. And in fact, I have posterior superior iliac spine and posterior inferior iliac spine. So there are total 8 iliac spines. For now, we concentrate only on this one, the anterior superior iliac spine, and then later also on the inferior. The inferior is just a little bit below the superior and just above the head of the femur, right? Which is, if I have a pelvis, I want to show you where it is. If I had a pelvis, right? All right, so now, see, this is the anterior superior and that's the anterior inferior. Look where it is, just above that, just above that. We need this because the rectus femoris or the quadricep start from here. And the tensor fasciae lata and the sartorius start from here. This is the iliac crest, right? This is the iliac crest. This is the sacrum, and you see how the sacrum here is thick. See all this line here, see how thick it is? It's all thick, right? But if I look at this portion here, it's thin, right? So now you see how beautifully the weight from the spine come down here and then it distributed down here, and then look what's on the other side. See that? The acetabulum. So that the weight goes directly from here down to the acetabulum and down to the ground. Beautiful, right? Really beautiful. So now this is the distal epiphysis, right? And I'm blocking now the shaft of the femur. These femurs are fairly straight, right? It's that they have all this kind of, yeah, a little bit of flex, you see from the side, but not much from the front. And it's because they have this curve in here like this that we perceive them as really curved, but they are not really that curved, right? Unless you ride all your life, starting when you are 2, right? Then they found these bones of an archer. I guess I told you, in English archer. And, you know, those guys that had to pull like 160, 180 pounds, not just once, you know, hundreds of arrows. So they're incredibly strong arms, and they were that exercise, that weight will affect the shape of your bones. So the bones, these guys were very, very thick and a little bit bent. They also found a Roman knight, and those guys at the time were riding with no stirrups, right? Just grab the horse, right, with the leg. And the legs of this guy, this Roman knight, with a soldier, right, were kind of bent a little bit like this. And very thick with on the attachment of the adductor muscle, the attachment was very, very rough because those muscles developed greatly. So now as the muscle develop, the attachment of the muscle also develop so that you can hold on to that force, right? Okay, so now here I have, go from behind, we're gonna see the condyle. We do, this is the articular placing here. And just in front of that, I have the patella. So the patella is going to be positioned about, starting about at the level of the articular plane. So when you see the end of the patella, you know where below that the tibia begins. It's really not exactly there. The patella goes a little bit lower, but it's a good indication of the length of the patella. So let us show you how to show, length of the leg. I'm gonna show you how to measure the leg, right, from the outside. Okay, so now from here we have the foot coming out like this. And now we have the tibia coming down like this at an angle, right? And the fibula on the side, right? It's a little bit like the radius on the ulna, but the fibula is not really the foot is not really as mobile as the forearm, because different things, right? This has to walk, it has to sustain weight. So you don't really need that range of movement, right? Same thing with the joint. The joint of the hips is not as mobile, as flat as the one of the shoulder, because we have to put weight on it. So that has to be deep. We don't want to dislocate the hips when we are running away from a leopard, right? Okay, so now let's see what happened here when we put the muscle over here. Actually, let me finish that so maybe you catch up, right? How you doing, guys? Following?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Just let me know, right, if I need to slow down a little bit. And now we're gonna go over the landmarks. I'm gonna mark them in red. So we have all the landmarks of the leg, right? So this is the tibia, right? This is the head of the fibula. This is now the lateral malleolus. Let's go down from here, down to here, right? And so the landmark is really important because they give us a clue on this. So we can see, we can reconstruct the skeleton, right? In looking at our model. So we better understand the pose, the structural aspect, how the muscle connect, and all of that, right? Okay, so then I have the shin here. You can see the margin of the shin right here. It come down like this, and then as we go toward the extremity, it kind of separate this margin here. It's sharp here in the middle, but then as you get down to the bottom, we kind of separate, and the anterior portion of the tibia is kind of flat, right? So now let's see the landmark, right? So we have seen now anterior superior iliac spine, right? Right, we need to make it red. Anterior superior iliac spine, right? Anterior inferior iliac spine. Pubic bone, very important landmark, right? Greater trochanter here, but the greater trochanter is visible only from the side or from the back, not from the front, right? Patella, right, or kneecap. And then I'm going to see here, on the side here, this bump in here that we feel the bump. If you touch the patella from the front, right, the patella, and then you move slightly on the side, just off the patella, there's a bone. That bone is this. Is the distal epiphysis of the femur, right? So that would be called, the bump in here is called lateral epicondyle. So just to give you a quick glance in the future when we do the back of it, this is called condyle, right? This is the lateral condyle. Is on the side of the fibula, is outside. So the lateral condyle. This is the medial condyle. This bump in here is called epicondyle. So now we have medial condyle, medial epicondyle, lateral condyle, and lateral epicondyle, right? So the bump that we see on the side, meaning you feel the bumps, but you don't feel that because this is covered with muscles, right? And this is a articular portion covered with cartilage that is then making contact with the top of the head of the tibia. And then this is the head of the tibia, right? With also the condyle and epicondyle.
Functionally, what is the difference, just to help remember, between a condyle and epicondyle?
The condyle is a big bump, epicondyle is a smaller bump. No, it's so condyle
That helps.
is big, right? It's big. It's all this forming here, right? Actually, it's visible more on the medial side. This is called condyle, right? That is called epicondyle, meaning the condyle on the periphery, on the outside. Epi means around, I think, means in Greek, I can't remember exactly, it means around, about, right? So this is the condyle per se, which is bigger. The epicondyle is a bump on top of a bigger bump. Right? So we feel this, right? But we don't feel this, right? So condyle is also a type of joint, right? Which is rounded like this, right? In the arm, we have also the condyle. Let me show you. The arms. I lost the arms. Okay. Right. So in the arm we have, this is called condyle, right? It's a bump. And this is called trochlea. On the side, this is called trochlea. But, so therefore we would have, oh, let me see. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I got the opposite. I'm sorry. So this is called condyle, right? This is called condyle because it's rounded forming here. And it connects with the radius, right? This, therefore, is called epicondyle. This bump in here is called epicondyle, right? So condyle, epicondyle. Basically, the condyle tends to be a rounded form like this. And this one instead, I got confused because it's cut in half, and I put together these two. But in reality, this is separate. This forming here is called trochlea, right? So the trochlea is like that, right? And therefore, this is called epitrochlea. But it's easier if we call both of them condyle, and we call this lateral condyle, medial condyle, and then lateral epicondyle and medial epicondyle. You see, this is not an epicondyle, pretty much like what you see on the femur, a bump, right? With the cartilage, and on top of it, another bump, right? So now below here, I have the tuberosity of the tibia. tibia. And that is where the tendon, the patellar ligament connects, right? So the quadricep comes in here, attaches onto the patella, and from below the patella down, there's a thick tendon that connects now with the tibia. Basically, is the tendon of the quadricep, right? They call patellar ligament. This instead is the head of the fibula. It's another landmark, right? Because we can feel it. We can feel the bone. So when we see a little bit of a bump on the side of the leg, right? Then we know that is the head of the fibula. So when we find that, right, we follow this, it's covered with muscle. We see this bumping here, and that is going directly down to the lateral malleolus, which is the end of the fibula, right? So now, when I see this, I should then, you know, in theory, you have a straight line between this one and this one, so you can connect the two. When we do the leg from the side, it's going to become more evident, right? So now, these are the main layers. And of course, we have also the medial malleolus here, right? So lateral and medial malleolus. Okay, so now let's block in the main volume of the muscle. But before we do that, I want to show you this carrying angles, right? On another drawing, because that I want to use that for something else. Carrying angles. And imagine we have now thigh like this, right? And then I have now, here's the knee. And this is now the lower leg and the foot. So if I look at the leg, I see that the angle, now this is explained by this, right? So if I look at the leg here, I see that the overall direction of the thigh comes in at an angle. I'm not talking about the femur, right? But I'm talking about the general volume of the thigh. Comes in at an angle like this because the whole bone is oriented like that. So the muscle will also follow that kind of angle. When you get to the level of the knee, right? The box of the knee is going to show a different orientation. So the lateral margin of the box of the knee is straight because, as we're going to see later on this margin here, there's a tendon. The tendon on the bicep that kind of flattens the side of the leg. And from the inside here, instead I have this forming here coming in because the inside the tibia is scooped in here, and I don't have a tendon like I have here that connects with the bone inside. So this portion is straight. This portion feels like it's coming in like this, right? And define what we call the box of the knee with the patella here. So now that angle of the box of the knee is oriented this way. Then from here down, I have down from the center of just below the knee here, there is the tuberosity of the tibia. And from here, I go down to straight the middle here, right? Straight the middle. This is the shin. And then you culminate with the medial malleolus, right? And therefore, it looks like a whole leg, the tibia is oriented at an angle like this, which it is, right? Slightly inward like that, but not as steep an angle as this. So I would have one, and exaggerating a little bit, right? For the thigh, two for the box of the knee, and three, right? Meaning in, back out, and in a little bit, but not as much as the top, right? So that creates this kind of sinuosity, this kind of curve in the leg that I want to consider when I draw the pose realistically, and because that's how the leg is oriented. If I don't capture that, my leg will tend to be blocky, will tend to be rigid, right? But these segments are articulated, are joined beautifully.
I'm a little misunderstanding. The lower leg, that is that arrow a little bit to the side?
This one here,
Yeah.
it goes in.
Straight down, or is it straight down a little bit in?
In, yeah. So imagine this. This is the,
Like
this is
bone, okay.
a little bit. See, this is the center line straight, right? This
Yeah,
was a little bit. But this comes in more at a slightly bigger angle than that.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
See this angle and this angle. So this is a little bit bigger than that angle in here. So you have in, out, in again. But all angles are different. So this one is different from that, right? So now, let's block in the main volumes, right? The main volume of the leg. We're going to start analyzing the volume of the leg from the outside. And in here, instead, we're gonna go in from the inside out, right? So, do you need to take, I mean, you're gonna have the video anyway, so, but you need to take a picture of this. I'm going to mess with this. I'm going to draw over it. So maybe you wanna take a screenshot or something like that so you don't lose anything, right? You let me know when you're ready, right?
I'm done.
Okay. You guys done?
Yeah, just as a reminder, I don't think, unless anyone else has, I haven't gotten any videos or notifications of that yet. I know you were going to check on that.
You did any video at all?
No.
Maybe Meredith, maybe you're not in my, did anybody get the videos?
I don't think so.
Nobody?
Videos, you mean put on Canvas?
No.
No, the videos of Zoom.
That we did in
No.
our class, the videos of the class.
No.
No.
Oh, all right. I thought my brother sent it to you, so I'm gonna ask him again. So there's something wrong. I'm gonna call him again tomorrow and ask him to post them. Would you do me a favor? Would you send me your email address so I can send them to you directly to the email address,
Okay.
right? Because I think it's easier like that, right?
What's your email?
Where do we send it,
My
Roberto?
email is right. You send it to this email, and then I'm going to have. So let me ask you this: did any of you have problem with Canvas in posting images?
No.
I did not.
No.
No problem.
Okay.
No.
Good to know, because some student in another class, they could not post it. I don't know what was happening. I think Michael took care of that, but there have been some issues. So I was wondering if this is part of the issue that you cannot. I mean, I'm pretty sure my brother sent you the thing, so maybe I don't know. Maybe there's something going on. So if you send me the images to this address, then I will send you the links that are now. He will post on Vimeo, and then you can see them from Vimeo. All right, so I apologize. I'm sorry. I just didn't know.
Well, one question. There are videos in Canvas.
Yeah.
So
You can watch those too.
are those different videos than these recordings?
No, they're different. You can watch those too. Those are extra.
Yeah, okay.
You can watch those too for no extra price. They are part of the course, part of the. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of soften this up, right? You guys were suffering in silence. You wouldn't tell me, right? Now you should get them. You should get them. I know all the other students are getting them, so. All right, so now let's block in these volumes. So let's think now in terms of big volume, and then we subdivide them, right? So I'm gonna block in here the volume of the thigh, thinking that the thigh will start from so we feel, when we touch on this side here, right? Most likely you're going to feel the bone here. Now, some of us have maybe a little bit more fat in here, and maybe it's not as you don't see it as much, but you should be able to feel a bone in here. As you move down the leg, you don't feel it anymore because the muscle here, the vastus lateralis, develops, becomes thicker and covers now the femur with a certain layer of muscle. This muscle here will go up to the top of the patella, which is now my landmark. I want to kind of keep it right here. So it goes down like this, right, to the top of the patella, the lateral corner of the patella here. And that is the profile of the thigh here like this, right? From the inside here, from this area here, right, inside of the pelvis here, I have now the other side of the thigh coming down like this. And this will have to go here. That's the adductors. They go down here to the corner of the femur, the distal portion of the femur, like this, right? This looks thin, but later now I'm blocking in here the tendon of the bicep that come from behind, and connect. It goes from here back like this, and then come out from here to go to the top of the head of the tibia, which is now another visual landmark. So we're going to keep the visual landmark red right here. Now, from here up to the iliac crest, I have now the gluteus medius. Right? So I blocked in very, very loosely the outline of the thigh, and later I'm going to define it a little bit more precisely, right? Maybe this is a little bit too rounded, so I'm going to reduce it a little bit, right? Because the side of this muscle tends to be a little bit more flat. There, looks better, right? Now, below here, what I want to do, I could block in now the big volume, the main volume of the calves, here like this, looking at my subject, and I'm looking at my subjects here called the calves. Where do they start from? Well, I have here now the knee, and below here I have the ligament of the knee, right? So that could be a point of reference that can help me. I look at that, and I see that the volumes of the calf start about at the level of this, a little bit below that, right? So from here and here, below the head of the tibia, the fibula, that's where the muscle develop, because this muscle in here start from this point in here. The muscle of the leg start from this point in here, right? Below the head of the fibula and below the tuberosity of the tibia, like this. And then from the back, start behind, I don't see them, but they start becoming evident because they start from behind, about at the level of the head of the tuberosity of the tibia. So now I have a volume here, like an oval volume. How big is it? I look at my model and I want to see how big this is in relation to the whole leg. And I'm looking at that and see, well, it's about a little bit longer than, in this case, a little bit longer than half the length of the lower leg. It could be more, it could be less, depending how the calf develops. So I look at that and I draw the whole thing like this, right? Because what I'm doing, I'm concerned about the volumes. I'm not concerned about the outline. I want to see how this is related to that in terms of volume, right? So I saw this forming here. I block it in. Then below that, now I have the tapering of the form of the muscle, because this is where the chunky portion of the muscle develop, right? Below that, this is the point, you start narrowing, and that's where the muscle gets thinner and becomes tendon, right? So now I have this portion in here. At the level of the malleoli here, I have another widening of the form here. And below that, I have the foot. So now let's go back and then carve out more muscle, right? So starting from here, anterior superior spine, aiming for this point in here, actually aiming first for a point that is here about a third of the total length of the inside of the thigh, right? I have a point in here, I'm aiming for that point, and I go down from the anterior superior spine down diagonally like this. And now I go along the side of the leg, of the knee, and then come forward like this, with a tendon, right, that goes to just below here. It goes here. Just below the tuberosity of the tibia. This muscle, this is a muscle, and it's called sartorius, right? Sartorius is the longest muscle of the body. And it's very convenient for us when we want to look at the proportion, because what it does, it cuts the thigh in two diagonally and divides two main muscular groups, the adductors and the quadricep. So if I cut this diagonal in half, I have now on one side the group of the adductors, which is all of this.
So, Roberto, the
I'm sorry,
sartorius,
the group of the quadricep, that is all of this, right? So, yes, you're saying?
the sartorius is that long, thin muscle that you just colored in.
Exactly. So this is the sartorius. You're gonna draw line it in blue, right? This is the sartorius, right? The sartorius, now here, this form here is a little bit bulgier because here I have the part of the quadricep, which is the vastus medialis, which comes a little bit to add to the volume of the thigh, the profile of the thigh, because is to the, in front. So it's like this. This is the quadricep, and the adductor goes just behind that. So this is on the side, and this is to the front, diagonally. So one is directed like this, and one is directed like this, going toward the femur from here down like that. So that is the adductors. So I have one muscle is sartorius, sorry. Adductors is 4, and quadricep, which is this group in here, is also 4. And I'm going to block the individual muscle in here, right? So now I want you to pay attention to the volumes, right? The volume of the muscle. So this is the adductors group, right? Let's call it group. This is the quadricep group. That's a sartorius that cuts in half diagonally like this. And from here, this muscle in here, the sartorius goes behind part of the quadricep, covers the posterior half of the block of the knee, and then eventually move forward again. We're gonna see it from the inside, so it's gonna be more clear. And it goes to below the tuberosity of the tibia, to the side, inside of the shin, with, this is called goose foot. This portion here, because the tendon web out like this as they connect with the tibia, they web out like that, and the anatomists call it goose foot, right? Or pes anserinus. Right. Now from here, I go down straight like this. This is the shin, right? And you had to end up at the malleolus, so eventually I curve it like this, right? So this creates an aesthetic pattern, right? The sartorius with the goose foot and the tibia and the malleolus create what it has been defined during the Renaissance as Cupid's bow. Right? Nice, right? Very nice idea of connecting an anatomical form with myth, with aesthetic, with story. And this is very important to understand. Why did they do that? Because if you look at the skeletons that were depicted during the Middle Ages, they were scary. Those skeletons were dug up, right? And they would not really mess with them too much because everything was already known according to the medieval anatomists, because Galen described it, 1,500 years before. So they said, why mess with, actually 1,200 years before, why mess with that? Read what Galen said, don't mess with that. But the Renaissance, they revised the whole world, the whole universe with the lens of science, right? Mathematics, anatomy, right? And then they create art based nature, right? Nature is revised like this: nature, science, math, anatomy, etc. And then art now is based on the analysis of nature with science, mathematics, etc. So when they kind of, and of course philosophy, etc. During the Middle Ages, the body was scary because death was connected with the Great Plague, right? So a third of the population in Europe died because of the plague. So that was a horrific event that traumatized people. But during the Renaissance, the human body is revisited with the new humanistic approach to the universe. And now the human body is not something that will decay, that will die, and you have to, not to pay attention to the salvation of the body, but to the salvation of the soul. During the Renaissance, the body is seen as a manifestation of the greatness of the divine. So then the parts of the body are now glorified also in that sense, right? How beautiful creation is. So now they start, I wouldn't say romanticizing, but connecting these elements with something that's beautiful, that is humanistic, right? So Cupid's bow is such an example of a humanistic reading of the human form. Now, when we block in this form here, instead we have to, we start with a simple oval like that, right? But then what we do, we start moving a little bit more toward the organic, and there's a peak on the side of the leg in here, which is kind of here, right? Or here. It's a peak that is difficult to identify, right? And from here, I go down toward the ankle, and from here, eventually I have the tendon to go out toward the toes, right? They go out toward the toes like this, right? So the malleolus, the lateral malleolus is going to be behind this volume here. On this side in here, instead, the peak of the gastrocs is going to be, so this portion in here, the gastrocs tend to be a little bit flatter, right? And the gastric peak a little bit lower here, like that, peak like this. From here, I have now a sharp change of angle, not sharp, but you know, a clear change of angle, and then soon after, a straightening of the form, which is now the lower portion of the volume. This is the soleus, actually, not a muscle in here we're going to see later on. But the important thing is that you're going to find typically this. One, the lateral peak is higher than the medial peak. And the lateral peak is softer, whereas the medial peak tend to be more evident. That's a typical balance of behavior of the muscle of the leg. So now, these two peaks are going to be oriented at an angle like this, whereas the two peaks of the medial and lateral malleoli are going to be oriented like that. So now we have, these are our angles, and we have these carrying angles in here, and we have these angles created by, I may have made it too chunky, but I want to make my point, right? Now, we have these are angled inside here that sometime they're going to be very visible, especially if our model is somebody who runs, who jogs, who bikes, etc. But if our model is somebody that doesn't really do my exercise, then this form is going to be very, very subtle and soft, right? So, but still, even so, you're going to see a little bit of difference between this peak in here and that peak in there. The way this kind of widens out more or less evidently, and you're tapering on the form in here. So you're going to still see them, but less clearly. So if you don't really know they are there, you might most likely you're going to miss them. You're not going to see them, right? So now I here now the volume of this portion here, the muscle that extend the foot and the toes, and this one here instead is the flexor, right? Okay, so now let's look at this muscle here now in a more organic way, right? So we start from the stereometric rendering, right? Here, that helps us to establish the big volume and establish a skeleton. And we move on now on to a more volumetric approach. We bring together dominant main groups of muscles, right? And actually, in fact, I need to block a couple of muscles in here and show you the beginning of the leg before we move on to the anatomical rendering of the muscle, right? Which we're going to build up now. So from here, diagonally down this way, consider the lilies, right? Consider the trochanter, the great trochanter, right? So I'm going from this point in here, covering over the great trochanter, right? And this muscle in here is called tensor fascia lata. TFL, right? Or tensor fascia lata. Right? Tensor fascia lata, it's a muscle. If we're gonna, it's a bulge here. It's visible. We have at the Academy in New York a model who's two models that have this bulging here because they are, one is a field hockey player, the other one is a soccer player. So they use the legs in a variety of ways, and it's visible. Otherwise, that muscle here, it's not always that evident, right? But it's a muscle, tensor fascia lata. So what happened in here, this muscle in here create, together with sartorius, a dimple in here. When you see, we have very skinny model with muscle fairly developed, but they had to have low body fat. There's a dimple in there. When you see the dimple in there, you know that they are just above that. You have the origin of these two muscles in here, sartorius and tensor fascia lata, right? So, but that is the beginning of the quadricep too. Let's see, the quadricep begins here and then it goes up, down to the top of the patella. So now on the side here, on the side, just behind the tensor fascia lata, I see the gluteus medius. Right. Then beginning of the leg will be about here. So the beginning of the leg is about at the halfway between anterior superior spine and pubic bone. Halfway here. So now we're going to see a curve like this right here, where we have, well, let's consider this as just one block, right? Just one block. Here now I have the inguinal ligament going from the anterior superior iliac spine to the pubic bone. This is called inguinal ligament right here, right? And below the inguinal ligament here, I have basically the beginning of the leg. The two are kind of tangent, right? A little bit. And the genitals develop here below the pubic bone, So up here, from the center of the pubic bone going up, I had the linea alba, right? But the linea alba is part of the abdomen, but just, you know, as an extra thing, linea alba. But the thing is that we always want to consider, when we consider one form, yes, we are isolating it, but at the same time, I want also try to reconnect it with other parts of the body, even if even I don't need it now because simply because it contextualizes your parts of the body a little bit better. You have some extra information that can permit you not just to remember better if you kind of connect one part with another one, but also you have more measurement. You can see, okay, it looks right because if from here I should have this arm muscle and this arm muscle. You have more ways of checking the proportion, measuring your proportion, right? So now let's go over this muscle, right, with the muscle. I'm going to synthesize the adductors group as one group because the adductors are 4 muscles and they're kind of complicated. They're very complicated actually. So I'm thinking we don't see much of it. And for now, we don't really need to understand all the overlapping of adductus longus and medius and minimus and minus. We don't need that. We need to know that overall, as a group, this muscle here start from here, right next to the pubic bone here, just below the pubic bone here, and with a thick tendon here, right? And then they attach all along the ischiopubic ramus. What is the ischiopubic ramus? This is the ischiopubic ramus, right? Ramus means branch. So the adductors muscles start from here, all the way to the ischio. So it's a big series, big group of muscle. They're separated, right? So one is here, one is here, one is here, and then one is here. The manus start from here and along this margin here with 2 separate sections. So we don't need that, right? We don't need all these complications. So this is, I think, the longus. The long adductors start from here, and later we're gonna see how the tendons show up. And then all these muscles in here go from this area here down. Part of it goes down to the femur behind. Go behind. They go to this lining here, right? So this lining here is called linea aspera. It's in the back of the femur. Linea aspera means rough line, right? And they attach here like this. The linea aspera has 3 lines in here because one line is for the adductors, one line if the part of the quadricep come back, the gluteus is here. So, but many muscles will attach in here, right? And the adductus majus will end up here. See this little dot in here? That is called adductors tubercle, right? And the big chunk of flesh, the muscle goes here like this, right? Down like that. So for now, we don't need to see all this complication. We just need to know more or less where it starts from and where it goes. Start from here and goes down here behind the femur. And from here, it goes here, right, to this little adductors tubercle. And the main volume of the adductors develop up here and eventually becomes tendinous. And it goes down, it's a long, thin tendon here to the adductors tubercle. But this muscle in here is composite. So I have a flat portion like this, right? And a chunky portion goes to the back. And this is not even that complicated, but it's even more complicated when we look at this. So what I'm saying is just let's keep it as simple as this. Instead of being subdivided in parts of muscle like that, we have a kind of a flat portion of the adductors here like this, right? And a fusiform portion that goes behind like this, and this portion kind of merge, the two merge together like this, right? Now I have the adductors group. I like to call it adductors group, right? And that's what it is. So adductors, they meaning adduct, to add, bring the leg together, close to each other, right? So adductors group. So next, we're gonna look at the quadricep, right? So the quadricep as the name implies, a forehead, right? Four heads. So, but I'm going to look at only 3 heads because the one deep head that, actually, let's put it in. Let's put it in, right? Let's put all of them in. So the lateral head of the quadricep, I'm gonna draw them light now because eventually I had to get rid of the deep layer and put the superficial on top. The lateral head here is called vastus. Vastus means being big, not vast. Vastus lateralis, which means the big one of the side, or the outside. The vastus lateralis are from just below the trochanteric here, covers, it's thinning here, and then as it moves down, it becomes slightly thicker and covers the side of the leg. As the mid-length in here, it flattens out a little bit, and then from here, it will turn and go toward the top of, let me see if I can make this bigger. So, there you go, all right? It goes toward the top, the margin of the patella, like this, right? Now, this is tendon now, this is tendon, right? I'm going to soften up the femur. You want to take a picture as is now, so before I go over it. You tell me when you're ready, guys? Okay, good. So now, enlarge it again. So now I'm going to soften it up, right? Because we don't need too much noise, right? I mean, visual noise. So let's take this out a little bit, right? And I'm going to, now from here, right? From here, the lateral side, this muscle then from the side turns around, wraps around the femur, and attaches in the back on the linea, onto the linea aspera, right? So linea alba, linea aspera. Asperity, you know, when you say asperity, it means aspera, it's Latin for rough, tough, difficult, right? Not just textural, but also rough life, aspera life, like not used anymore in modern Italian, but in Latin it was, Dante used it for the Divine Comedy. Una selva aspra e dura e forte. It's the woods, when he got lost in the woods, right? This selva means wood, like aspera. It's tough and strong woods. He got lost. It was a metaphor for depression, right? He found himself depressed, so in the middle of the path of his life. Anyway, so now this is the vastus lateralis, right here, and then it goes toward the center of the anterior part of the femur, right here, like this, right, and from here goes to the top, to the center, to the top of the patella. So this is the tendon. So quadricep, this muscle will, and then below here I have now the patellar ligament, which is the patellar ligament. Is a strong ligament that when athletes break that, you know, that's bad, right? Because then the quadricep is done. Then you have to wait months, and all the weight of the body goes in here. So now this is the whole vastus lateralis that is visible from the front, like this, right? The vastus medialis instead will go from the inside of the femur down like this, right? And it goes over to cover the tendon of the adductor, which is now behind, right? Because the adductor is coming in from the side of the femur, right, on the side. And the quadricep goes over it to the front. So now from here, go down like this, right? Aiming for the side of the patella and the top of the patella here, like this, right? And this covers this portion in here a little bit, right? And come down like this to cover the rest. Now this is the vastus medialis, right? The big one of the middle. Now, over here, in between these two, there is the vastus intermedius. I'm not going to refine them now because I had to go over it, so I don't want this to be too defined. Right? Maybe I had to erase some stuff. Vastus intermedius, the big one of the middle, right? The big one on the side, the big one on the inside, the big one of the middle. And this starts from the center here, just below the trochanter, like this, kind of over these two, right? And now it's here, right? And its tendon now connects with the patella, so here, right? And the now the vastus medialis, the tendon of the vastus medialis is very short here. And the outline of medialis, the muscle of medialis will go a little bit lower than the top margin of the patella, whereas the other tendon stay only on the upper margin. This goes onto the side margin, the medial margin of the patella, right? Now, on top of this, now we have, this is also colored, right, because this is a muscle here. Now, this is the three muscle, right? The vastus muscle. On top of these muscles, I have the rectus femoris, right? So the rectus femoris means the straight one of the leg, right? So the straight of the leg. So notice one thing, these three muscles in here start from below the trochanter, and they go to the patella past this joint. So clearly their effect is on this joint, right? They work on this joint. But the rectus femoris start from the anterior inferior iliac spine, meaning it starts above this joint and it goes down to the same point, meaning this muscle will have effect on two joints, not just this one, also this one. So this muscle here can extend the leg, right? But also can lift the leg, or help, aiding in lifting the leg forward, right? So now, from here, I start from here with this muscle, and I go over the rectus, the vastus intermedius, down like this, right? And now I want to erase some of the deeper muscle because they are going to go. And now I have rectus femoris. I started from the anterior inferior iliac spine, rectus femoris, comes out to this tendon. This tendon can be visible below, right here. I'm going to outline this with blue so we identify its form a little bit more clearly, right? And then the tendon of this muscle here is now start fairly high like that, right? And what it does, this muscle is tapers. It tapers higher than the other two muscles, right? And this is the tendon. So now you see how this muscle here now goes over the vastus intermedius, which is now not visible anymore, right? And partially covers also the vastus lateralis and vastus medialis. And it's the peak of the thigh from the front, right? The peak that we have in the front of the thigh here, right? So now, now I want to notice how there's a pattern of the tendon here, right? So this is short, long, and medium. That's the pattern of the tendon. It's going to be always like that, short, long, and medium, right? So now, the peak of the form of the quadricep, therefore, is going to be up here, because this muscle starts higher than the other muscle, is on top of the other muscle. We're going to see when we look at the side view of this, right? So now this is the adductor, right? And now I want to block in deeper muscle here. This is going to be the gluteus medius, going from the side of the pelvis down to the top of the retrocenter. And on top of that, I have here the tensor fascia lata, right? We had seen this tensor fascia lata already here. Tensor fascia lata goes now from here to over covers trochanter here. And now the gluteus medius is slightly posterior, but I still see it back behind that, right? Now, from here, from the anterior superior iliac spine, down, going down diagonally here, cutting between the quadricep and the adductors, I have, remember what the name of the muscle is?
Yes, it's the sartorius.
Yes, exactly, sartorius, right? Sartorius, for whatever reason, means the tailor's muscle. Sarto means tailor. Sartorial, right? When you say sartorial, right? Sartorial means the muscle of the tailor. Why is that? I don't know. But some say it could be because it looks like a long strip used by tailors to measure, you know, which I find it creepy. Yes. Imagine you go to get your, you know, your suit done or your dress done, and the tailor pulls out the sartorius muscle. What is that? Oh, right. Sartorius, right? No, some say that the position that the tailors have when they have stability, when they can measure people, they have a position of the leg that makes the tailor, the muscle pop out. I don't believe that. I think it's more because it looks like a string. So now here, this muscle cuts diagonally in between the two main muscles on the thigh from the front, and this is sartorius, right? So now from here, it goes down like this. You now have this spear behind, a little bit behind the vastus medialis, right? And then now it covers a little bit it goes over the box of the knee. And you know when you see in the model, the bump that we have here, the bump that is here, right? On the inside of the knee, that's what it is, that's sartorius. The sartorius, and then some model, you're gonna see some model have a bigger bump, right? Some model have a smaller bump, depend how developed that muscle is. But you want to know exactly where the joint is and where this bump is in relation of the other structure, because if you make this bump a little bit higher, a little bit lower, it's going to look like a broken knee or a bee sting or malformation, right? It doesn't look right. So you really have to know where to put that bump in there, because otherwise the knee looks awkward, looks weird, right? So now, from here now I have this muscle, the sartorius, it's come over the box of the knee and then moves forward like this, right? Like this. And then goes down to the goose foot, right? We're gonna see the muscle of the other muscle of the tendon, the goose foot, later when we do the back and the side, because the goose foot, this tendinous structure here, is created by the tendon of 3 muscles, and but they're not visible very well, so we just leave it like that, right? Actually, we can add one muscle here that contributes to the goose foot, and it's the gracilis. The gracilis is a muscle here. I write it down here, gracilis, right? So gracilis is a muscle that is basically framing the inside of the thigh here, right? Like this, and disappears behind this volume here of the vastus medialis, and disappear behind the sartorius, and its tendon now is start becoming visible here. So the goose foot is a tendon or structure created by 3 tendons: the tendon of the sartorius, the tendon of the gracilis, and the tendon of the semitendinosus, which is posterior, and we don't see it. Here is the, now, this muscle here, the adductor here, you want to make sure that you start below the pubic bone, because above the pubic bone here, I have the pectineus. Pectineus here, right? And in this area here, right, between the inguinal ligaments here and the sartorius, I have the iliopsoas, just barely visible. And with the leg flexed, because this muscle is deep, there's a little bit of a depression because this muscle come up, that muscle goes deep. So somehow that depth that we have in here is enhanced during when the leg is lifted up, right? So that's a pectineus, right? Pectineus, because in the pelvis, not as visible here. This is called linea pectinea, but it's smoothing here. In the skeleton, this would be all jagged, little teeth like that, and that the pectineus muscle attaches in here. So pecten means comb in Latin. So it's like the comb line, right? All right, now on the side here, coming from the back, down like this, appearing here, I have the tendon of the bicep. So the tendon of the bicep, as we have seen before, kind of straighten the side of the box of the knee like this, right? And this one is too much because in reality, I have to fix this a little bit because in reality, the box of the knee, right? On one side, I have the distal epiphysis, right? The two condyles of the femur create the box like that. But the tibia is a little bit thinner here, and then it's kind of scooped more, meaning this portion here is smaller than the top of it, and it kind of carves out like this more evidently, right? And therefore here it's not going to be so blocky, but it kind of scoops sooner. Therefore this portion here is higher. I want to invent a laser eraser, like a little laser eraser. It sounds like a laser eraser, right? Zzz, 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 like that. That should be cool, right? So you don't have to kind of sweat it out, right? Okay, so now laser eraser. That's cool. I want to do that. Okay, so now this is now the muscle goes in and create this more evident change of angle in here that gives me the knee that kind of angled box, right? But so that's a bicep femoris, right? Bicep has two heads. So bicep femoris. So now the quadricep, the tricep, the bicep, right, are muscles that have separate origins and one common insertion, right? So these four heads of the quadricep start in separate point of the femur of the hips, but they all converge in one point, and that's the point of insertion, right? The point of insertion. So always remember, the point of origin is fixed, and the point of insertion moves toward the point of origin, right? So the tensor fascia lata, this muscle here on the side, eventually is just covering in front of the sartorius. Then in the lower part, connects with the iliotibial band, right? So iliotibial band is a long tendinous fascia that goes down along the side of the vastus lateralis and eventually goes down like this, along just behind the vastus lateralis, and then connects just here at the level of the tuberosity tibia. This is the iliotibial band, ITT. Right? So let's look at the lower leg now, right? But the idea is that when we start with a form like this, right, it helps us to a form like this and vice versa, because this becomes our general idea of the organization of the dominant, the main groups, muscular groups of the leg. And once I know that, I have, when I know this, and I go back to this, when I put together so many little muscles, if I don't have an idea of overall how they are organized, it's very easy to lose the form, right, the typical form of the leg. Because of course we're not going to see all this muscle in a model. We're going to see dominant volume, right, dominant volumes. And even when we have more information, like we see more muscle in here, overall they're going to be dominant volumes that I have to be aware of, because they permit me to keep in mind the interaction, the both physical, structure, but also aesthetic interaction of all these muscular groups, right? Now here I have started from the right next to the tuberosity tibia here, right? I have a muscle that occupies about upper half. So I'm going to lighten up the skeleton, right? Just need a faint trace of it. I want to know where the anterior margin of the tibia is, right here, and because this muscle will not go past that. So now, starting from the lateral side of the leg, just below the tuberosity tibia, going toward the head of the fibula, but not quite to the head of the fibula, I create a form in here like this, right? Tapering fusiform muscle that develop mostly in the upper portion of the lower leg, the lateral side of the lower leg. And this muscle is called tibialis. This is the muscle we have in the front, right? And if you lift up, you put your hand right on the, just a little bit below the knee, a few inches below the knee, and at the level of the tibia, right, where you feel the shin, you move up and down your foot, and you see that muscle contracting. That's the tibialis. The tibialis lifts the foot up and down, right? From here now I have the tendon of tibialis that becomes thin, fairly, it's a long, thin tendon, right? And what it does, it will move now to the inside of the foot. So this muscle starts from the outside, from the lateral side of the leg, and then moves across on the inside of the foot. So if you look at your foot, as you lift up and down the foot, you're going to see that right at the peak of the foot, there is a tendon that appears and disappears, depending when you lift and when you don't. That is the tendon of the tibialis that lifts up and down your foot, right? And it's unmistakable, right on top of this peak of the foot, right? Tibialis. Now, next to the tibialis, actually, let's not put the tibialis next to the tibialis. Let's put one is on slightly next to the tibialis again. So we're going to skip a muscle, right, between the tibialis and the peroneus, right? And then we're going to put the muscle in between. So the peroneus start from the perone or fibula, are the same thing. Perone or fibula. So this muscle can be called either peroneus or fibularis. But it's more commonly called peroneus, so we call it peroneus. So this peroneus starts from the perone or fibula, just the head of it, and then it goes down along the fibula, will also attach along the fibula, and then it's it's two peroneals that start from here. Peroneus longus and brevis. Let's stick with one for now, right? And they go down like this, both of them, right? One on top of the other one, and then they disappear behind the malleolus. And then we're going to see later on behind malleolus, and then come forward. So we're going to see it later on, but I'm going to see this muscle in here, right? So it's a peroneus, right? Now, in between these two muscles in here, sometimes these muscles are kind of big and they cover the upper portion of the extensor digitorum, right? The extensor digitorum is the extensor of the toes, and it starts from just in between these two, under these two, and then as this muscle goes one to one side, the other on one side, they create an opening here, and this muscle now appears in the lower half, more or less, of the leg here, lower here, right? And this goes to the toes. So let's block in the toes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. From here goes 1 to the second, third, fourth, and fifth toe, but not to the first because the big toe has its own tendon, right? So now I have 1, 2, 3. With that 1, 2, 3 muscles. And again, that is the extensor of the toes. In between the tibialis, the tendon of tibialis, and the tendon of the extensor digitorum, this is another tendon that comes out like this from a muscle that is hiding under this muscle, and that is the extensor hallucis, or extensor of the big toe, the same thing, right? So now look at this, look how beautiful it is. I have, this goes down this way, this goes down this way, this goes down that way, that way, that way, that way, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So I have 4, 5, 6, yeah, 6 tendons here. There are other tendons in there, under there, but they're not visible from this point of view. So for now, we leave them alone, and we focus only on what we have a good, clear view of, right? Because we don't need to complicate this view now, right? So now, we block in the peroneus is longus and brevis, one on top of the other one. We don't see it much from here. We leave it alone. There's also peroneus tertius. Just pretend it doesn't exist for now, right? Because we want to really focus on the big dominant volume. Now, here, starting from just behind the head of the fibula here, just below and behind the peroneus, there is a soleus, right? Soleus is a big flat muscle, right? And it's visible here, right, a little bit here, and it disappears behind because it goes behind to the Achilles tendon. So I don't see it, but I do see a little bit of the margin of this muscle peeking, right, from behind the peroneus. Behind this, I might be able to see a little bit of the gastrocnemius. No, I might not. So we see a little bit of a lateral gastrocnemius that will block in here, and then this also goes behind, right? So I have quite a lot of muscle in the lower leg. The lower leg is complicated as much as the forearm, right? But the forearm has also this movement that the lower leg does not have, right? So we have now tibialis, peroneus, extensor digitoris, hallucis, soleus, and gastrocnemius, gastrolateral. On this side here, I have now 3 muscles. I'm going to draw them first with a line, and then I'm going to give them some volume. At this point, I do see the shin. Like the shin is here, visible. Although this is the shin, right? And starting from about the level of the head of the fibula here, I have a volume like this, which is the volume of the gastrocnemius here, right? the soleus will appear now lower here, because, and we're going to see later on, the soleus starts from here, but then it goes diagonally down behind this muscle, and then it's visible again here on the other side. Soleus visible from both sides. It comes down like this, right? And then now behind here, I have another little muscle, which is a flexor of the toes. I have 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, 3, right? So let's color them. So medial gastrocnemius here, soleus, and then flexor of toes. Actually, there's 2. Well, let's stick with 1 because it's too many, right? Okay, so medial gastrocnemius, soleus, flexor toes. So let's see. 1. I'm going to carve it out to make it more evident, right? More visible. 2 and 3, right? Okay. And these they go behind the shin, right? So now you see what I'm saying? There are so many muscles in here that if I don't have a general idea of how they organize and when they are together to what they add up to, if I keep adding muscle without knowing the entity of each muscle, I don't know what I'm going to end up with, but I know the end result in here. I know this is the known entity. So I know that they have to fit in this. Meaning, in this case, right, what we privilege as artists is the aesthetic aspect or the general harmony between the various parts of the body, because that's our main concern. We are not really concerned about knowing them from a medical point of view. We are concerned, we want to know them from an aesthetic, harmonious point of view. So this will help us greatly to figure out how all these guys have to come together, expressing beauty, expressing aesthetic, right? So now what I would like to do, I would like to go over the side view, but before we do that, I would like to show you quick ways of blocking in the foot. I don't think we discussed the quick way of blocking in the foot, so I want to go over that, right? So any questions so far, guys?
Not yet.
Oh, you okay? All right. So let's move on. Quick way of drawing the feet, right? And then we go on the side view of the leg. And I'll show you some angles from the side view of the leg too. So now, think of this, that when I look at the feet, I want to start reducing, the feet are very complex, right? I want to start reducing them to basic form. So start with the heel, and I'm gonna draw the heel as a sphere. Block it as a sphere. Stop me if you have done this already, right? Let me know. Well, after that, I want to attach to this a wedge, like that. And because if I do this, I think of this as something that is three-dimensional, right? Meaning I know where this is in contact with the ground, right? I know now that my leg is going to come down directly from here. So I can attach now another three-dimensional form like that, right? And here I have now the medial malleolus coming out as another form like this, right? From here, in reality, this is really not so flat. It's going to be, but by doing this, what I've done is I found where the point of contact of the foot is on the ground, and I can then relate it to our point when I measure for drawing. Then I'm going to see how the side, in this case, the inside of the foot is angled by simply visualizing. I put my pencil here next to the model, visualizing a line, the horizontal line, that gives me an idea of this angle here. So meaning I'm not going to copy that line out of the blue. I just put in my model an horizontal line, and that way I see how much this line in here is diverging from the horizontal line or from the vertical line, right? Whatever that might be, whatever is more convenient. But I don't go after a line out of the blue. I use two lines. Now I have two lines that visualize a triangle. That gives me much more information than just trying to figure that out, right? So now I block in the wedge in here, right? And then I'm looking at this is not straight like that, it's curved, right? It's curved like this. So I want to figure out the curvature of the toes, and then I want to figure out now a little bit more of organic characteristic of the foot, right? So from the sphere, I move to the description of the heel, a little bit more, not so round, but a little bit more flat. This moves in, and then here I'm gonna have the back of the two, the tarsal and metatarsal bones coming down like this. And at this point, this area here flattens out a little bit, and the toes become smaller and smaller. So they're going to flatten out. This portion is going to be flattened out. And then I have a curvature, the curvature of created by the tip of the toe that I want to see how this curve, right? From here now I have the big toe, the ball of the toe here, the foot right here. And then here I have the arch of the foot, right? From here, I can take this out because it's really not as straight. I needed it before to establish the volume, but now I want this to be a little bit more organic. There's a curvature in here, right? Which creates a chunkier volume here, because this volume here is in connection with the body. A lot of weight gets discharged down from here to here, right? And to the big toe, right? And this portion here instead. So if this portion is straighter, it goes down straight like that, right? This portion instead is a little bit more slope here, and it got more gradually changing. So now along this line here, I can block in the toes, but I can also block in before I do the toes, the general arrangement of the alignment of the base of the toes and of the knuckles like that, right? So you can have 1 and 2, right? 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So now I have all this alignment of the toes, and then I look at this and say, okay, now I need to add maybe more detail here. Maybe this needs to be less pronounced. Maybe this in here, I need to show the tendon, right? The tendon tibialis, the tendon extensor digitorum, and this form here we see a little less pronounced, right? And maybe here there's also another alignment of another segment, because we have 3 phalanges here, except for the big toe, there's 2. These have 3 phalanges. So now I block in the 3rd phalanx, right? With the nail at the end, and then the little folds, right? So I'm going now from a very blocky, right? Blocky construction of a sphere and a wedge, and then I add gradually to it the organic form. So again, sphere, right? Wedge of wood, right? Now blocking the base of the foot where the leg is going to go here like this, right? And now same thing, right? We find all the organic form, the big toe, the alignment of the toes, the curvature, the malleoli, the tendons, and all this stuff. And you're going to end up with very quickly with an organic foot, right? Make sense? So this should help you great. Same thing for the other ones. If you look, the model looks away, so you block this like this, right? And then the foot will move that way, fine, right? You move whichever way you want it to move, right? But the foot now is going to move away from me, like this way, and I start first with this form in here, and then I block in the wedge, and then add more details, etc. But this didn't come out nice, right? So you can do it a little bit better. So I block in the sphere, right? Maybe now I block it even more extremely because I'm looking up from up down, right? I block in the base of the foot, block in the connection with the leg, and this is gonna be straightened out, right? And from here, maybe I have the foot now going, for some reason I cannot draw a foot this way today. Anyway, let's pretend that I didn't do this, right? But it's the same thing. What I'm saying is the same thing. Sphere, right? Wedge, leg, and then that way is measurable, right? Foot like this, right? Even overlapping, right? Here, wedge. Make it organic, block in the toes, block in the malleoli, right? And then you have very, very quickly a very simple rendering of the toe, which is actually not simple, is essential, right? Is essential. And that's what you do when you block in your pose quickly, if you want to, right? So let's go on. I want to show you now the side view of the leg because it has some angles that are very, very important, and we need to be aware of them, right? Let me look at the model from the side. Here. So we're going to start again with stereometric forms, and then we're going to block on it quickly all the various, we connect all these stereometric forms with all these other visualizations, right? So we started with the one, the pelvis here, right? Actually, blue. Okay, so start with one, right? Side out big. One, two, three, four. Okay, so now, okay, so yeah. This is one, right? This is one. Let's divide this in 4 segments, equal segment, right? More or less, right? Actually, I'm looking at perspective, so I'm not sure I have it right, but it looks good. So now take 3/4 of this. So the height is 1, right? Take 3/4 of this and then put it here. And that's the pelvis seen from the side, meaning seen from the side, of course, is much narrower than seen from the front, right? Now here I'm gonna block in at the upper quarter as is, right here. At the lower quarter, PB. PB. So now, iliac crest. Now, divide this also vertically in 2 equal segments because we need that too for the positioning of the landmark, right? So the iliac crest, we start with iliac crest. It's going to go from here up to here, go past the middle a little bit, right? Go a little bit past the middle, and then peak, and then go down like this, right? That's the iliac crest. Now, from here, I can go down straight, but with a little curve like this. This is that smiley face we haven't seen from the front. It's this, right? It's this, right? So from as is to PB, as is to PB. Now, from the front, I go down like this, and this is here, the ischiopubic ramus, right? Remember the ischiopubic ramus here, right? And this goes a little bit straighter, right? So the posterior curve is going to be a little bit more like this, right? Where now here, that is the ischium, right? Ischium, sorry. Now, the head, the acetabulum, or this is the acetabulum, right, is included between, we've seen the pubic bone and the midpoint, right, to the front of the line that divides the pelvis in two equal halves. So here. See how close it is to the front. See that here? Very close to the front. So now, actually I could make this even a little bit more curved like that, right? It's a little smaller. But we don't need to be at this point very, realistic, following all the little bump, etc. We just need to have a good idea where all these forms are in relation to the main axis, right? So just above the head, the acetabulum here, I have anterior, inferior iliac spine, right? Now, the trochanter, the great trochanter, you're going to position, the top of the great trochanter is at the level of the center of the acetabulum, right? Comes out like this here, and then it goes down as an egg here, divided in half by the line of center of gravity, or the line that divides this in half, right? And then 1.5 heads down, I have the femur going down like this, right? I'm going to draw the stereometric on top of this layer, right? So we kind of do two things at once, right? This is the femur that goes down like this, right? And from here to here, I have 2 heads, from here to here, 1.5. And I want to block this in coming back like a shillelagh, like a knobby end of a shillelagh, right? And below here, I have the tibia. And now let's block in a little bit of volume, stereometric volume. So this is the volume, stereometric volume of the pelvis, right? Here, here, and here. Coming down like this, straight down like this. This is the, from here to here, down like this. This is the volume of the thigh. Down straight from here, when you do the skeleton, you leave some space in here because the stereometric volume of the thigh includes the soft parts, but the bone in here is not visible. Over it, I'm going to have muscle. So they don't correspond exactly because this is just the skeleton and this is with the flesh part. Later, add the gluteus to this, right? Now here, I come down with half, 1.5, and that's the foot, right? This goes down like this. At the 1/3, I stop and I block in the foot here, and I add a little bit of volume behind. The foot is a little bit more than 1, right? So I take this, I put it here, and I say, all right, a little bit more than 1. The foot is about 1 or a little bit more than 1, right? So the heel, I add it later. So I make this 1, and then I add the heel back to add a little bit extra volume, right? Now, this is the articular plane of the ankle, right? This is the tibia. So the tibia, and this is the fibula, start here. So the fibula starts at the posterior, inferior, lateral corner of the head of the tibia. This is the shaft of the femur, right? Which it's straight now, but most likely it's going to be a little bit bent like this, right? A little bit bent like this forward. Not much, but there's a little bit of a curve like that, right? So I can add now these organic aspects of the bones once I have established their structural aspect correctly, right? I put organic over structural. Right? The patella is going to be a little bit to the front of the distal epiphysis of the femur, down at an angle, and it stops at about very close to the beginning of the head of the tibia, but this has to be at an angle, so that at an angle like that, right? Now, tibia, right? About the same measure of the patella below the joint, I have the tuberosity of the tibia, right? So that's tuberosity of the tibia, kneecap, and now I have also the beginning of the head of the fibula, right? And which is the head of the fibula is a little bit higher than the tuberosity of the tibia. Find the midpoint in here of the ankle, and then you define the two margins of the tibia, and you go a little bit to the front, a little bit to the back of the midpoint, and you see that the tibia, the main shaft of the tibia, is angled a little bit back like this. It's not straight on. It's just moving back a little bit. And that is the typical configuration of the tibia. Now, from the back in here, I move forward like this with the fibula, and the fibula does the opposite. It moves forward from the back. So the result is this, that we have these two bones that are, one starts a little bit to the front, one starts a little bit to the back, and they come together and they overlap at the end. So the tibia and the fibula are overlapping at the ankle joint. The foot is going to be here, right? I'm not going to get into the bone of the feet now. And that's going to be the connection with the foot. So now we have the stereometric rendering, right? Where this is 1, this is 1.5, this is 2, including feet. And then I have, considering the pelvis in here without the glutei, I'm going to have the sacrum coming out like this. So I put the whole form like this. I add now, because it's easier if I stack up these blocks here without including the sacrum. It's easier because this is basically, the end of the pelvis is in line with all the boxes of the thigh and of the leg, and cuts through a little bit through the heel. So I stack them up like this, and then I start adding more information, right? So let's move next to this, and we work on the side view with a little bit more organic forms, right? It's the, as you can see, there's consistency in this method. It's always the same method, but I add complexity as I develop.
Can I take a picture?
Oh, yeah.
Done. Thank you.
So now, so guys, did you buy the Gottfried Bummes? You should. Bummes is...
I have it, and I have a funny story. I bought the Bummes animal drawing, and
oh!
3 months to come, and
Oh.
when it came, it was, to my amazement, in Russia, which I have no idea how to read.
It's very used in Russia.
It seems to be like it, but you know, it was a surprise to me.
Well, so you ended up with the drawing by Bummes of animals, right? I didn't know that.
Yeah, but I was very delighted to see it, but then I realized when it came months later that.
So you're saying, well, so man turned into animal, right? So we kind of knew that, right? Men are animals. So there's this joke that I heard on TV about this Alaskan place, which is very, very wild, right? And so the joke is that this place is so tough. It's so tough to live in that women are men and men are animals. So I guess that to live in there, right? I guess that Bummes went to visit that place in Alaska. I didn't know that he made a book on animals. I thought Goldfinger did that. I didn't know that Bummes did it also. So all right, let's start again with the Rita, are you Russian?
No, 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 no. I'm from Finland.
Ah, from Finland. Okay.
Yeah, so I think it was in, so we don't speak Russian, so I had
Oh,
no
okay.
idea.
No, I know with the pass between Russia and Finland, you know,
Yeah, no,
I don't want to associate too much.
but I think when you order from Amazon, you don't always think what language it's gonna be. I have another Bames book that's in German, so.
Yeah, because it was not translated until recently in English. It has been in German for many years, right? And then now they translated a couple of editions in English. So we see we can block in again this form here. I'm gonna keep it light, right? I'm gonna keep it very light and soft. But I do think that the Russian they use a lot the Bames in the Reptile Academy, all the academy they use a lot. But we use it too. We use it also, right? But
my understanding it is really was very popular first in East Germany when that existed, and then Russian and in German.
Yeah, because they needed to maintain a thorough understanding of the human body because they had the Soviet realism, right? They needed to do the poster and propaganda, etc. So they really continue with the realistic school in Russia. And, but even today, I mean, but the traditional school comes from the French Academy because the Russian were adopted the French Academy method, right? Okay, so now.
Roberto, can I ask you to just quickly review the ratio of heads of the parts of the leg? I'm afraid I've written down different things so many times. The pelvis is one.
Sure. So it's one for the pelvis, right? Here. And then one
head.
One head.
Yeah.
One head. And then 1.5 heads from the end of the box to the knee. And then 2, including the feet, from the knee to the ground here. But if we look at this, right, with the foot separated from the lower leg, then this is going to be lower leg is 1 2/3, and the foot 1/3. But it's easy to remember, you know, 1, 1.5, 2.
Great.
And then you break it down later, right? So it's easy to remember. You start to remember 1, 1.5, 1 2/3. 1/3 is kind of a lot of stuff to remember. But if you remember that the last segment is made up of 2 segments and together make 2, then it's like a mnemonic device, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's like a complicated mnemonic device. Right?
Okay, great.
So, but it's going to take some time. But the thing is that eventually you learn to remember that the femur, which now I'm going to go over the measurement of the femur, right? The femur, so the pelvis is 1, right? Pelvis is 1. The femur is 2, right? And now the lower leg, because now I'm looking at the lower leg, is 1 2/3. And the foot is 1/3. Mm-hmm. So that's the skeleton. But the difference between the measuring the volume and measuring the skeleton is that this is more accurate from the point of view of skeleton. This is a conceptualization that helps me kind of have a quick, faster idea of the blocks rather than the anatomy, which anatomy is always complex, right? Complicated. So I'm going to show you later how we can apply this to the practice of drawing the figure quickly, right? So now, and then eventually you can come up with your own association between volume, right? Whatever is more convenient for you. I'm going to show you later different methods. So now here I have over here, I can start blocking in the main volumes of the organic form, right? So I can start from, let's say, I have these 2 points of reference here. That's the iliac crest is going to be here, right? And then from here, I have now this line here of the inguinal ligament, but the belly gonna stick out like this here, right? So that's the inguinal ligament. The leg will start from here, which is kind of halfway between the iliac spine and the pubic bone, which is just here where the pubic hair is gonna be, right? And then that's the belly. The leg now starts just between the 2 points in here, right? And it goes down like this, following this direction here, but the peak of this leg in here, the leg, is going to be about here. That's when the form peaks, right? Because we had seen here, I have this muscle, the rectus femoris, starting higher than the other one and ending sooner than the other one, meaning the peak of this muscle is higher than the peak of this other muscle here. Make sense? So now here I have the peak of the quadricep here, and it goes down to the patella, which is going to be down at this level here, right? And now I'm blocking the glutei, so the sacrum is going to be in between these two references here, right? Therefore, the gluteus is going to be sometime, so in women, the sacrum is going to be more visible here because the pelvic tilt is more pronounced, so the sacrum is going to be more visible. In men, the sacrum from the side is difficult to see because it's somehow flatter and not as visible. So, meaning, in other words, in women, in men, the sacrum is very straight. See that? But in women, this is moved back a little bit here because by moving back, what that does, it opens up this space in here, which is where the head of the baby comes out. So if this moves out of the way in women, because now it's straighter, this will open up that space in here. Also, in men, this angle here is much narrower. In women, this angle here is more like this. Therefore, between having this open up like this open up like that, then you have a much bigger space in here for the head of the baby to go through. So this means that the sacrum in man is forward, and as being flatter, it's more commonly, I don't see the sacrum here popping out because it's straighter down like that. So the glutei are here, right? And the gluteus will go past the ischium is here. The gluteus goes over the ischium, right? Goes over the ischium. Maybe this. Just over the ischium. So the ischium is here. It has to go over the ischium because the gluteus goes to the femur, right? The femur. So the femur is going to be here. So this now, starting from here, from the ischium, I have the hamstring. The hamstring start from here or the bicep and goes down to this point in here. So that is the point, the head of the fibula, where this muscle will go down like this, to bicep femoris, right? So now I have the anterior margin, the posterior margin, and then from here I have now the, this line here in reality is not so straight because the tibia moves back a little bit. So I'm going to alter this line here. Instead of having a line like this, when I draw the anterior margin of the leg, which is the tibialis, right? Remember this muscle here is the tibialis, right? It's the most prominent, is the frontal. The tibialis will go down to here, across here. So it's not here, it's here. So now the tibialis will do this, because I have to respect this angle of the tibia that moves a little bit back, right? And now from here, I have the tendons of the extensor digitorum goes out like this, right? Creating this sort of intermediate passage between the leg and the foot. So this is the foot, right? This is the leg, 1, 2, but I have to add the tendon and then we'll do 3. So when you draw the feet, if you don't put this in between the leg and the foot, it looks like flippers. The guys wearing flippers, like going swimming somewhere. And the posterior, likewise, you want to have this moving back to the heel, that's Achilles tendon. So you end up with a flaring, a conical flaring segment at the ankle here, which is created by the tendons. Now, posteriorly here, I have now the gastrocnemi, right? The gastro will start from here, just above the condyle or the femur. They start, and they're thin now, it's tendinous. They go down, coat that, and then the volume of the calf develop posterior like this, right? And you can find a coherence, a kind of affinity with the form from the front, but this form here, the tibialis, is much thinner than the form in the back because different muscle, bigger muscle, and they have to lift the body, and this one has to lift the foot. So, you know, there's a big difference. You can go on your toes with this muscle, right? But with this one, you just lift the foot up and down like that. So it doesn't compare in terms of volume. Below here, I have now the tapering of the form here, right? Or the tendons. And I'm going to kind of soften up this here so we can reveal a little bit the volume, the outline of this muscle from here, right? With a hint of the skeleton. So now, therefore, these are above the joint here, right? And it comes out like this, fairly flat because it's tendinous here. Then develops its form. And let's say in the upper half, a little bit more than that. Again, remember, check these together. Check this margin here, this margin here. Don't separate them. See how they kind of work together, because together they belong together in the sense that all these muscles peak up in here in the upper half. So they're gonna have a coherence, and all down here, they kind of get thinner here, right? And because they become tendinous, right? So now, what I have here, I have a good outline of the forms of the leg, right? And now I can carve out muscle. So this is yet another method that we can approach. So first we draw the organic outline, we copy the model, and then we put in the muscle. Similar to this, but this started from a more schematic rendering, right? Which is blocked in a volume, right? Divided like that, blocked in another volume, made schematic volume, etc., right? And then eventually we end more defining basic, essential, dominant volume, right? But in this case in here, imagine we are copying the model, right? We're copying our model, and then we want to see, double check if we did a good job copying the model by see if the skeleton fits in, the muscle fit in, and also it becomes like a painless, bloodless dissection, if you want, right? Now, let's go back in here. Now we have here the iliac crest, right? On top of the crest, I have the sternal oblique. Here, had the inguinal ligament. This is the beginning of the leg, right? This is the belly that goes to the top of the pubic bone, right? And you notice that the belly here is anterior in relation to the iliac spine. So the iliac spine is not the most anterior part of the body unless you're super duper starved, and then you're gonna see this come super flat and the pubic bone sticking out like that, right? So you see, for example, in gymnasts, right? This iliac spine, this is the pubic bone. This goes, in female gymnasts, this portion here is sticking out so much, the pubic area is sticking out much because they don't have an extra ounce of fat. They just need all the muscle to do the athletic gesture, not to carry around, useless fat. So, and it looks like sometimes it looks like they have a cup, but they don't. It's the pubic bone, right? Plus, in women, over the pubic bone, there is also a little bit of layer of fat here, which is what gives the name to puberty, right? When you develop puberty, that becomes, because hormone develop and it creates this little fatty pad in here, hence puberty. So now we have now here a volume. It come down from here like this, right? And I'm gonna start dissecting this, putting muscles in here. But before I start putting the muscle in here, I want to see where this goes. The greater trochanter is going to be here. The greater trochanter is going to be included, remember, between, to kind of divide this in half, right? And a little bit above, well, at the same level as the center of the head or the femur, or a little bit above than the pubic bone. A little bit above the pubic bone. So you see the pubic bone a little bit higher than that. That's where the trochanter is, right? Now from here, I go down like this, down like this. From the lower margin of the iliac crest, I had the gluteus medius. And gluteus medius is going to have different, you know, it's going to become tendons in the lower portion here, right? Gluteus medius, right? So if I have medius, it means I have also two. Medius is one in the middle. So I have maximus and minimus. Minimus is under the medius. We don't worry about that. Maximus starts pretty much here in the lower portion of the iliac crest. It comes down here like this toward the trochanter. It moves toward the trochanter like this, right? But then it's big. It ends up here. So eventually the lower portion will go down to the femur. So I'm going to wait to finish this because before maybe I want to block in other muscle here, but I can start already hinting at the form, at the direction of the mass, the volume of the gluteus maximus. Now, I'm doing something here that I always tell my student not to do, which is I am drawing the muscle starting from the outline, the profile. Don't do that in the sense that, I mean, let's do it now because we don't want to be too, we don't want to waste time on that. But of course, I would have here a layer of fat and a layer of skin. So if this is my profile, I don't start from it. I start from here, a little bit thinner. So the figure, when you do a flayed figure, it's going to be always a little bit skinnier, sometimes quite noticeably skinnier than your model that you start from, right? But now I don't want to get too much into that detail. I want to show you where the muscles are, where they start from, where they go, right? Now, you see how this goes down this way, right? This goes down this way. And they go toward the trochanter. From here now, the iliac spine, which is going to be blue, the landmark is going to be blue now, I guess. Iliac crest, iliac spine, right, as is. Iliac crest. I go down diagonally from here to the trochanter, which I see now. So this is going to be the landmark, right? So at PAFA, guys, when you next time you go to PAFA, go see the David. And look at here, in this area here, there's an egg-shaped form. That's a great trochanter. So Michelangelo knew exactly the skeleton, the muscle. He dissected many bodies. And that David is an anatomical text. All the bumps in the knees, everywhere is in the right place where it should be. It's amazing, really amazing. And if you look at the size, so when I saw the David at PAFA, I thought, wow, it cannot be that big. And I've seen it in Florence. I bought the one outside the inside quite a few times. But when I saw it in PAFA, I said, that's too big. It's not as big as it is. And then I saw pictures of online of people fixing the David with those elevator thing that you used to trim the trees. And that's how big it is. So it is as big as that. I think Michelangelo did it when he was 26. He did that thing when he was 26. So quite a feat, quite a feat. Okay, so this is the TFL, tensor fascia lata, the muscle that puts tension on the side band. That's what it means, right? Tensor fascia lata. Now you see how the tensor fascia lata is now in front of the trochanter, but I see it from the side because it doesn't cover it, right? But now, from the tensor fascia lata, I have tendons developing and going toward the great trochanter, over the great trochanter. From the gluteus medius, they go down, through the gluteus maximus. This is the gluteus maximus, right? The gluteus maximus go diagonally toward the great trochanter. And from the gluteus medius, they go down directly on top of the great trochanter. So this is the glutei, right? So now I want to see, starting from the back, which is going to be, actually start from the front, right? From the front, I'm going to have now the rectus femoris, right? So the rectus femoris will start from the not anterior superior, but anterior inferior, which is a little bit below the superior. So it's going to be here, right? So from here, I have now the rectus femoris starting from here like this, and then it goes up to the patella. So that is the form of the rectus femoris here, right? And that is more or less the form. But over in muscle here, above here, this is another muscle. This is sartorius. So the sartorius, wait, I dropped something. I don't know what it is. And maybe it was not important, right? Oh no. I dropped the pencil sharpener is spread, shading over the floor. Fine. Okay, see this here? This tensor is anterior superior spine. It cuts diagonally, but it's right on the margin. So I see it here now, and then it starts here, and then it disappears because it goes to inside of the thigh, so I don't see it anymore, right? So from here, it's gonna go on the inside, and that's it, right? Now, below here, I have another muscle. This is the vastus medialis, right? The vastus medialis start from about just below the great trochanter, and then it goes diagonally toward the patella, meaning it will move slightly forward. So now, if this muscle can start from here, right? Trochanter is start from just below trochanter, and then it has to go down here. So what it does is this. It goes to the patella. So now I have one sartorius. Two rectus femoris, three vastus lateralis. Right? So now vastus lateralis, then if this is the femur, right? This is the femur. Remember what I said, it wraps around the femur and connects with the linea aspera. So it going to go past the volume of the femur and it goes, let's say, up to here, right? So it's a wide muscle from the side, it's fairly wide, but it always has to go down to the patella. So from here, develops like this, and then it moves forward to the patella like that, right? So this is now the vastus lateralis. I did not show the vastus intermedius because I thought we don't need that now, right? This time of the day, we don't need that, right? So now, it's really don't need that because you don't really see it. So you need it only when you, later on, maybe you want to study anatomy in depth and thoroughly. But for now, we just need to be, to study the essential aspect, right? That are the most important aspects. Because this is what I see. These are the superficial forms, right? So this is the vastus lateralis, like this, right? It's the tendon, right, of the rectus femoris. So this goes down like this. And then this, the line of this has to go toward the patella, so down like that, right? Now, in the back here, I have the gluteus that has 2 points of insertion, right? One is on the femur and one is on the surface. So let's block in first now the, let's block in now the bicep femoris, right? The bicep femoris will start from the head, the ischium here, the sciatic bone, the bone we sit on, and from here it will go down to here, to the head of the fibula. So now this is a landmark and this is the other landmark. I don't see that landmark because it's going to be under the gluteus and under the muscle. I don't see it, but I see that, right? So now from here I have this, the long head of the femur is going to go very long and straight down to the head of the fibula, like this, right? Here down like this, right? And then this is the long head, right? The long head. And the short head, it goes diagonally up, not to the pelvis, but to the femur. And it goes from halfway down the length of the femur, down like this, diagonally, like this. Like that, right? So, but Rita, are you in Finland now or you're in Philly?
I am in Philly.
Ah, okay. I was
Yeah, I've been taking a lot of classes. I live in the Philadelphia area.
I would like, oh my gosh, it must be like, what is time is it now in there? Like, it must be like 3 in the morning, so 4. Is it 9? 9 and 6 is, yeah, it's 3. Maybe Finland is different time zone, but.
Yeah, it's the same as Italy, I
But
believe.
same in Italy, so it's almost 6, right? Almost 3 in the morning, so yeah. All right, so but you're in Philly, so Philly time, right? Okay, so now what happened is this, that the gluteus medius will go now here in between the tendon of the bicep and the vastus lateralis to the femur that is back there. So that is meaning it's going to hide, the gluteus maximus now is going to hide the point of origin of the bicep because it goes over it, right? So this is now the tendon, right, for the gluteus maximus. The gluteus medius, the bicep femoris now is going to under like that here. And these fibers in here, some go deep behind this muscle in here. Some, they go over it here. And together with the other fiber of the other muscle will contribute to create the iliotibial band. Or tract band, or ITT or ITB band or tract, the same thing, right? Now, where does it go? It goes to, the iliotibial band would go down to the head of the tibia and down to the tuberosity of the tibia. So the tuberosity is here. It will go down like this, going over the vastus lateralis, and then down like this on the side of the thigh. It's a white, thick ligament like that, right? And now, let me see, where is the black here? Now we have, this is the gluteus maximus, right? This is where it ends in terms of muscle right here. And actually, they get kind of thin muscle in here, but the main volume tend to be more pronounced in this area here, and therefore what it does, it will create a scooped area here if there is no fat, right? And this also comes down like this, stopped in here. So now we see all this muscle in here oriented See, from the front down to the trochanter, from the top down to the trochanter, from the back forward to the trochanter, but in the lower portion, the fibers of the gluteus maximus, they will keep going because it's a big muscle. They keep going, and they go connect with the femur and with the iliotibial band. So when we have now, what time we have now? Okay, we should be able to finish. Which I'm pretty happy we did all of this because it's nice. Okay, so now from here, now I have the muscle of the side of the leg, and we start with the tibialis, right? Tibialis start in between these two landmarks, in between these two landmarks, meaning the head of the fibula and tuberosity of the tibia, I have three muscles. I have tibialis here, right? I have extensor digitorum here and peroneus here, right? So tibialis, extensor toes, and peroneus. Behind the peroneus, I have the soleus and gastrocnemius. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but peroneus is 2. So it would be, it's peroneus longus and brevis. Longus and brevis. So let's look at this muscle, right, before we get into the details. Okay, so now this goes from the anterior margin of the tibia, right next to the tuberous tibia, down like this, develop this volume here at the front like this, right? And then it goes along the margin of the tibia with a tendon that goes the other side of the leg here, or goes on the medial side. So that's the tibialis, right? I'm gonna work now like I did before. I'm gonna block in the peroneus. The peroneus starts from the peroneus or fibula, and it goes straight down along the posterior or over the fibula here. And then as it kind of tapers here like this, right? It goes now, with tendon behind the malleolus and moves to the front. Right, like that. So behind, under here, I have the peroneus brevis, which is another muscle here, and also has the same tendon, a different tendon, but overlapping with this. So I have two tendons in here, the tendon of the longus and of the brevis, and they move toward the front of the foot like this. So this is the peroneus. Between these two, I have, starting from here, the extensor digitorum, come down like this, right? Moves forward here, so all the extensor digitorum. And from here, I have all the tendons going down to the fifth, fourth, third, the second, but not the first, right? There is another muscle in here, the peroneus tertius. We'll leave it alone for now, right? Because it's really not visible. It's just a tendon. The muscle is actually, let's put it in here. Peroneus tertius, right? Peroneus the third, right? It's noble. Okay, so now in here I have, starting basically just behind the head of the fibula, the soleus here, right? It goes to the Achilles tendon, and then here the gastrocnemius, and then goes over the soleus and connect with Achilles tendon also. So this is the Achilles tendon. They're changing all the name now. They're not using people's name or misname, but I like the old names. What can I say? I didn't even remember what they call it now. Right. So now I have, maybe the scap became a little bit, no, that's okay. But now I have all these muscles. So tibialis, right? Let's go over them quickly again, because then I want to show you something else, right? So I have tibialis here, right? Extensor digitorum, or extensor of the toes here, and then it moves forward. Right? Now, so basically, these two, one moves across, one forward, one straight, one back, and one back, right? So we have this kind of wrapping around the foot, following its curve form. Peroneus longus and brevis here, right? Malleolus, so the malleolus is going to be visible, right, here. And then soleus and gastrocnemius. So these two muscles will go to the Achilles tendon, back, right? So now, quickly, I want to show you how these forms are oriented when I look at the model. So when I look at the model, notice this: you're blocking the volume of the thigh, right? And the volume of the pelvis like that. Right? You can also think in terms of these volumes, like big volumes of the various segments, because now we have become acquainted with this segment, how they come together, right? And the rib cage is going to be up here, right? Here, and that's a connection. So now this moves back, right? This kind of goes straight. And now the shin here is quite posterior in relation to the front of the thigh. So it's going to be here. And then this moves back compared to the back of the thigh. So I'm going to have this volume here and this volume here coming forward like that, right? So you see what happened here is that I have this is quite anterior compared to this. So if I drop a line down from here, right, I have a whole lot of negative spacing here. And if I find a point, so don't look at the line here because that can be deceiving. But if I find the point in here where the leg is touching in contact with the patella, and I go straight up, this goes halfway into the width of the thigh. That is how posterior the lower leg is in relation to the anterior portion of the leg. This portion here of the leg can be now here moving forward like this, see that? In a very lean model, right? And then you're going to have here very sharp passage from this volume here to this volume here. That's a very sharp area here. Now, this portion moves back and is quite posterior in relation to this. So you're going to end up having space in here now, right? Which is interesting. You have this space in here, you know, developing most in the lower portion, and this space in here developing mostly in the upper portion, right? And of course, now you have the lower leg, right? The lower leg, and you have to see how recessed this is in relation to that, right? How posterior the lower leg is in relation to the upper part of the thigh, right? So now, this is another thing I want to, okay, so now what happened is that, I'm trying to jam in as much stuff as possible. What happened is here is this, when, this is the flayed figure, right? This is the flayed figure, but if I have some weight, what happened, instead of having this moving forward like that, like see the posterior margin of the thigh moves forward like this, right? This portion here, we're gonna have subcutaneous fat, right? And fat tend to accumulate in certain area. This is one. So I've had this fat in here, then maybe from here it goes down like that, right? So my profile now changed from this, going this way, to going that way. Make sense? See that? So I want to look at my model and try to also to start thinking, well, where could the, because if this happens in here, you don't really need a lot of fat because fat tend to accumulate in this area here. And if you have a very skinny model, this portion here, the glutei, is going to be carved, and this is depression here. This is depression here. But if here you put some fat, then tends to be a little bit lumping coming out, in fact, instead of being carved in, right? So the fat is going to be the next thing you have to worry about, right? I do worry about that every day, right? I look at the scale and say, Jesus, what did I eat? Right? But, you know, we kind of want to consider that because it is going to be an element that softens up all the muscular form that tend to be so sharp in here. And it's really difficult to see them. But this being said, we want to start from this because this is more easily, you understand the body much more easily if you do this. Because when you start adding the fat, there are so many more variables to consider. So meaning, I could have a figure like this, or I could have a figure like this, right? How do I know? How do I know how much fat each model has? I don't know. So, and because the fat here could also come down like this and then stop in here, or maybe even when it's morbidly obese, you're gonna have fat kind of, you know, kind of accumulating like this, creating these kind of sort of bags over the leg more and more, right? And or here, right? So how that's gonna hide completely the form. It could hide it in a subtle, very just barely subtle way, or just completely. So too many variables here. So I want to learn this first, and then I'm going to have the possibility of kind of still interpreting where is the fat, where is the bone, where is the muscle, because I still gonna have some clues, and still access to the structure more clearly. But when I have a situation where maybe the fat is becoming really hiding the form, then there are too many variables. So this is your base because it gives you a very statistic understanding of the human form. From that, you can extrapolate a variety of changes and modification or typical form or specific form, etc. But that this will require, you know, a little bit more time. So start with this though, and then eventually move on to more difficult poses later on when you have a good understanding of the typical structure of the body, right? So, any questions, guys?
No, it's great.
No, it's really good.
Thank you.
Are you going to teach something like this in the fall?
Okay. Yeah, I am. I had to talk to Michael, and I began proposing a few courses, and I proposed 3, and then we'll see which one he wants to offer. And the 3 are going to be, I was thinking portrait. No, sorry. Portrait is going to come later. I was thinking offering starting the basic anatomy, but we have to decide if I'm going to teach it in month segments like we're doing now, which is probably what I'm going to do because it's easier for everybody. And meaning starting with the axial skeleton. So rib cage and pelvis, and also a little bit of the head, but not much. But the muscle of the torso, front and back. And then we move on to head. And then we move on to arms and legs again. And maybe facial expression, but we have to discuss that. So this is one possibility. Start in the fall with the torso, in 1 week. 1 month. And then also I'm thinking of offering portrait with watercolor and landscape painting watercolor from photographs. So these are the 3 courses, but we still have to agree on it with Michael. So I think 99%, the one on the torso, I'm going to offer the one on the torso. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I was thinking about giving some homeworks. Why don't you, as homework, why don't you redraw this that we've done today? Because there is so much stuff in here and that to do that it might be useful to redraw it. But you know what? If you don't want to redraw it, do this. Take photographs of a standing nude model, male or female, doesn't matter, or side view, that is, or of a cast, and put tracing paper over it and try to draw on one layer the skeleton, try to find out what the landmarks are, and draw in the skeleton. And the other one is try to put the muscle in. So my advice to you is this: get the David, copy of the David. There's beautiful copies. Start with the front view of the David, and then if you have time to find also the side view, do the side. But if you do this, the front view of the David, right, the legs, one layer you put in the skeleton, one layer you put in the muscle, you're going to have a great benefit from it, because the David is very, very precise. It's not a model, and model you might find variation coming from the person, but the David is idealized, or start from a great knowledge of the anatomy, but then the forms are idealized, are clear and clean and easy to see, and you're going to have a much easier time trying to put the muscles and the skeleton in the David rather than in a real person, because that's going to be a little bit more difficult. So try that to see what happens, right?
That's good.
Right.
All right, guys. I'll see
Hey,
you.
thank you.
You're welcome. If you don't have any questions anymore, I will see you this week, and I'll make sure that you get the video session, the Zoom session.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Great, thank
Have a
you.
good weekend.
You too, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.